In this video, we're going to take a look at mounting data that points to some very concerning signs of what we can expect this summer. Now, last summer, we saw multiple heat records shattered, and according to the data that we're about to cover in this video, this summer will very likely be even worse. But more importantly, we're also going to cover some very practical things you can do now to start preparing for what lies ahead. Mark my words, this will be the year that we begin to see these dramatic weather patterns impact our food supply. Our ability to collectively pivot to other food and water sources or out-science our way ahead of it all is diminishing. It's becoming increasingly clear that we cannot change the trajectory of our future, but that doesn't mean that we can't apply solutions today that will allow us to experience our future differently. You're also going to want to stick around to understand what these solutions are. So let's talk about it. Download our free risk assessment matrix. It's thoughtfully designed to help you prepare for the most likely disaster scenarios. Get insights on urgent threats based on your location to help you on your preparedness journey and set clear survival goals with a timeline. Click on the link in the description and comments section below to download this free guide. In a video last year, we provided you with a dire early warning, and I'm going to link to it in the comments below, but just to summarize it in a bit, in that video, we alerted you to an impending super El Nino weather pattern, explaining its formation, the impacts, and the importance of preparation. I wish we were wrong then, but we weren't. We aren't psychics, and we don't have a crystal ball here on our team that we're staring into. We try to look at this information as objectively as possible and just look at the raw data, the research reports, and the evidence that we see in countless news stories, each with a headline usually something along the lines of once in a lifetime or weather anomaly of the century. And before we get into the details of why this matters so much, and it's important that you listen to that component, let's take a quick look at the evidence, especially in the context of how this will impact our food production in the coming years. July of 2023 marked the hottest July on record globally, surpassing records since at least 1880 by 0.2 of a degree Celsius. This trend has continued for 47 consecutive years, with 2023 being the hottest year on record and 2024 expected to be even warmer due to the El Nino climate pattern. The consequences of this pattern, they include extreme weather events like storms and temperature fluctuations, with effects varying by region, including drier conditions for some and wetter conditions for others. And this winter has resulted in atmospheric rivers lifting the West and Pacific Northwest out of decades of drought conditions in just mere weeks. It has extended the drought across the Great Plains, brought frigid cold to the southeast and northeasters, snowstorms to the northeast. And as another wave of abnormally warm weather sweeps across the Midwest and Northeast, following the warmest winter in more than a century, over 200 warm weather records have already been broken in just early March, with more expected. With temperatures soaring into the 70s and 80s in multiple locations from Kansas to Michigan, Minneapolis, they even hit a high of 74 degrees that's typically not seen until Memorial Day weekend, which is 2 months from now. And this unseasonable warmth is predicted to expand eastward into cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo, potentially fueling strong thunderstorms. Now, meanwhile, the absence of cold weather in Canada will likely result in drier conditions and another massive season of wildfires. And has the weather in our lifetimes been worse? Yeah, of course. There are some isolated cases that we can point to, but has it consistently been this bad? Not really. And here's the part where you really need to pay close attention. The longer the period of time that you stretch and assess it out over, the more these last few decades and even the previous few years, they really stand out as growing in extremity. The signs and the data right now all point to another year's escalation of bad weather. And some of these charts are close to having to adjust their scales altogether as lines are way beyond averages. This year's extreme temperatures and wild oscillations will be more intense than last year's. Though we alluded to the problems that we'll have for food production in earlier videos, we will begin to see that more this year, next year, and probably for at least the rest of this decade. The switch. The transition to a La Nina pattern from June to August is highly probable, with historical trends indicating that La Nina conditions often follow strong El Ninos. Now, La Nina typically brings about contrasting weather patterns to El Nino, potentially resulting in a more active Atlantic hurricane season. And this could directly impact farmers cultivating citrus, tomatoes, and cotton crops. And while a switch to La Nina typically corresponds with cooler temperatures in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, the current record high ocean temperatures are expected to persist despite this transition. Now, scientists predict a 33% chance of 2024 being hotter than 2023, which broke numerous records, but are 99% certain that it will rank among the 5 warmest years on record. The significant cooling is not expected from the subtle shift to La Nina patterns. Now, warmer than normal sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic, they indicate favorable conditions for storm development. And as preparations intensify, experts stress the importance of being ready year-round, emphasizing that the atmosphere's behavior during hurricane season ultimately determines its impact. Now, if you're potentially in the path of one of these future hurricanes, you need to realize that on a long enough timeline, some tragedy or disaster will befall you. And the more prepared you are, the better equipped you will be to persevere and survive. And as one Louisiana Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness official stated, you cannot hang your hat on hope, but you can hang your hat on being prepared. And I agree. Despite the potential shift to La Nina, the ongoing influence of the strong El Nino could still contribute to warmer temperatures in 2024. El Nino events, they typically exhibit a time delay in their impact on global average temperatures, suggesting that even within the transition to La Nina, the significant influence of El Nino in the early part of 2024 could lead to higher temperatures. Now, presently, the strength of the El Nino event is borderline historically strong, and its duration into 2024, it remains uncertain. But however, climate scientists suggest that 2024 could surpass 2023 in temperature if it persists through spring and into early summer. Now, observations, predictions, and every reputable data point suggest that the Earth is getting warmer, and this is going to lead to more extreme hot weather events like heat waves. And here's the rub. That's what's in store for us this summer and for many summers still to come. And recent models predict that temperatures will rise even faster, making these extreme events more common. And the charts expressing this data must expand to accommodate the new data points. We will likely never again see the moderate temperatures of the last several hundred years, which gave rise to the ages of agriculture, industrialization, urbanization, and explosive worldwide population growth. Now, this increase in heat will cause problems for our health, communities, food supplies, and infrastructure worldwide. And even a slight rise in average temperature can make these extreme events much more likely. In fact, for most places studied, the chance of extreme heat doubles about every 20 years, and by the end of this century, scorching days could happen almost every year in many places. But here's the problem, though. Scientists are providing us with educated guesses, and their best guesses are that we are in for a worse and warmer year than we did last year, which broke all kinds of records. They're conservatively assessing charts like this one on daily sea surface temperatures, where you can see we are so high on the chart that we don't even intersect any data from the last 40 years. Or how about this one that shows the last 40 years that have been the warmest in almost 2 centuries, 173 years. It's not surprising people struggle to put these patterns into context when the data is so far off the charts and scales of anything that we've ever seen before. Now, the accompanying changes in temperature and the extreme oscillations of weather patterns in a time of modern agriculture are a future disaster that we will all have to face. Speculators and farmers know. Nobody likes losing money, so there's a lot of incentive to reduce speculation and find sure bets. And because of this, we can look at what commodity experts fear the most to understand the real threats to our food supply. A strong La Nina later in the year could affect wheat and corn output in the United States and soybean and corn production in Latin America. Now, however, a moderate La Nina could slightly boost agricultural output. And commodity prices, they surged in 2023 due to El Nino, with soft agricultural commodities like coffee, cocoa, sugar, corn, and soybeans rising by 12.3%, affecting global inflation and central bank policies. And while investors can switch to more profitable commodities, farmers, they face more significant adaptation challenges. It's easier to move money than it is to reseed a field or grow an entirely new crop that can only survive better than the one before. And already we're witnessing the impact of excessive rain on Southern California's strawberry harvest and the effects of weather fluctuations on global wheat and soybean yields. Wildfires, they further reduced available feed silage, prompting farmers to downsize herds and exacerbating the strain on the food supply. And the cumulative repercussions really suggest higher prices and food scarcity on the horizon. Both the wealthy and farmers, they recognize a stark reality. The risk of food production increasingly outweigh the rewards, and our capacity to adapt to erratic temperature extremes, including fall springs, droughts, deluges, frost, and heat waves, is diminishing. Crop failures are transitioning from isolated incidents to becoming the norm. And add to this the global conflicts and the weakening supply chains. It's going to lead some countries to hoard and reduce exports. And a looming food crisis is on the horizon for countries worldwide. And modern agricultural output is going to suffer a little more each year, and it won't be able to adapt to keep the high output that's needed to meet the consumptive demands of a growing population. And when significant gaps in food production emerge, we typically resort to paying higher prices, shifting to alternative food sources, or enduring periods without certain foods. However, these three options are not your only options. And as I said at the beginning of this video, there are solutions that you can plug in today that can significantly alter your future level of dependency on these failing systems. Real solutions. As we encourage in numerous videos on this channel and throughout our downloadable guides, your most important preps are your food and water reserves. If nothing else, you're not going to last a few days without water, and you're not going to last a few weeks without food, which is why these are so important. We recently released our free water guide through our city prepping website, and it's an important first step in understanding your water resources. Our water supply as a resource in the future is under threat from too much falling in some areas and not enough in others. It runs a risk of not flowing to you because of aging and failing infrastructure, to hackers altering the chemical levels that we treat it with to make it safe to drink. And the first solution for you has to be storing a supply to get you through at least a 3-week period of interrupted flow. Now, the same is true with food. If you weren't shocked at the speed at which purchase limits were placed on some items and others completely sold out in the early days of the COVID lockdowns, you should take time to remember that. A worse disaster over a large region, be it weather-related or cyber attacks, they're going to see grocery stores depleted and possibly even looted within the first 72 hours. We see this again and again, disaster after disaster. And look, that doesn't mean that there's not a personal solution. There is. Again, there are numerous videos on this channel and even more free guides on the website that can equip you with what you need to know to establish a 3-week or 3-month supply of food. And that's going to get you through almost every localized weather disaster that you may face, and it will position you well for things that you may face in the future. And more importantly, though, do you have a disaster plan or a plan for extreme weather? Do you understand the disasters that you most likely will face in your lifetime, a sort of prepper's risk matrix? And look, not to repeat myself, but again, there's a guide for each of these on the website, and they're all free. I'll link to them all below. When I plan for my own family's future, I don't see a world where things are going to get any better, and I'll just be honest with you. I mean, sure, it will improve a little bit here and there, but overall, if these clear patterns continue on their current trajectory, saying it's in your best interest to prepare is an understatement. It's also a cycle that isn't bending towards anything that we would have accepted and understood to be expected. It's getting more extreme, warming up well beyond average, and it's not going to stop according to every measurement out there. And look, faced with that reality, not taking personal steps to mitigate the impact of this uncertain future is really allowing yourself to be a victim. And as I always try to point out on this channel, you do not have to be a victim. You always have solutions, which we try again to present to this community. And that's one of the reasons that we tell people to start growing at least something of what you eat right now. And in so doing, you will learn a skill that your future self will very likely need. You'll eat healthier and be less dependent upon failing supply chains. And as those supply chains continue to be strained by extreme weather events and global conflicts, you will be insulating you and your family from the high prices and shortages that others will inevitably experience. And look, our opportunity for a global solution may have passed. And let's just be honest about that. Maybe it never existed at all. After all, our place in the world is small, even when our impact is great. But one thing is for sure, though, there are solutions that you can implement today that will leverage your chances of surviving a future of ever-increasing extremes. And I hope you'll consider our solutions and plug some of those in today into your life. The difference between being a victim or a surviving victor in the pages of history is preparedness today. There's no way to sugarcoat that. If you're going to start taking action today by first understanding and fully comprehending the real threats to your future you face where you live right now, I would suggest you immediately watch our risk assessment video, which you can click on here on the side of the screen, which provides you with a free download tool to help you determine for yourself how the future will impact you. As always, stay safe out there.